All right. Please, if you can, bear with me as I try to give you some of the points and features of this camera. So, the first feature I want to go over is the audio. Now, the audio that I'm using right now is from a Rode. It's that little fuzzy microphone at the top of the camera that I had shown you in a previous image on Facebook. So, this is the audio straight from the Rode, and at this moment, I'm going to switch to a cleaner version. So, what you heard before was raw audio, and what you're hearing now is something a little more cleaned up, a little more audible, and it's just a little bit nicer to hear. The next point I have is, I think it's the letterboxes, or no, focal length. Focal length, this camera is an 18mm to 135mm, which means that I can zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to switch over to like 50mm to what that kind of looks like. If I'm going to use 50, because the reason I would use 50mm is because I think it looks a little bit better with interviews and stuff like that. It compresses the background a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, and I'm going to move back. I'll probably have to move the camera up a little bit as I'm doing this. And I'm going to move back. So about the same, I'm really the same distance away from the camera now. It's just that the background is a little more compressed. It's pushed down. I think this personally looks better for interviews and talking to people and such. But really, it's all up to you, man. So that's an example of that. And I'm going to switch back to 18. What you're looking at right now is 50. This is what 50 millimeters look like. Now I'm back at 18. I think the next one, oh yeah, frames per second. The camera, or what I'm shooting at right now is 30 frames a second. I know for sure. I checked this time. Yeah, what I'm shooting at right now is 30 frames a second, and a lot of documentaries are shot at this frame rate. So yeah, I think it'll work out just fine. If you want something a little bit different, like a more cinematic feel, you can go for 24, which will be in the next video. So right now I'm shooting at 30 frames a second. It's probably a little bit more smooth, but again, it's up to you. I think it looks good. So I'm going to go to my next point, which is letterboxes. Letterboxes are something that you can use to, I guess, I don't know. Movies are typically shot in 2:3:5:1, which is a wider aspect ratio than what this camera can shoot at, which is 16:9. A way that I can fake that is by adding like a letterbox about here and about here. And that'll make the image look a little bit wider. Some people think it's a gimmick and that you're cheating. I just think it looks better for the image overall. The other one that I want to talk about, the other aspect ratio, I'm gonna move the camera, tilt the camera down a little bit. The other one that I want to talk about is 4:3. 4:3 was used back in the day between, like, I guess, really the 1980s and, well, really since television first came out, which is like it became popular in the 50s. So like from the 50s to, I guess, 2005, 8-ish, you most of the time you probably saw an image about like this, a bit cut off on the sides. I think it's a cool aesthetic, personally, and I think it'll work better with some other footage that I have, if that's really what you want to go for. But it's really up to you. Again, I'm just showing you what I'm capable of and what we can do. So hope you like this, and I'm going to switch over to the 24 frames a second footage right now. Alright, so this is 24 frames a second footage. If you can tell, this is how all movies are shot. It has a more cinematic feel to it. Some people think the motion feels more fluid, it feels more organic, rather than 30 frames or even 48 frames, which was which the Hobbit was shot in. I think the Battle of the Five Armies, I think the Hobbit was shot at 48 frames, which is double of 24. A lot of people complained about it, but anyway, that's just, I'm just talking about too much that's irrelevant. But 24 frames a second footage is what most movies are shot in, and I'm just going to move around, move my hands a little bit, just giving you an example of movement of what 24 frames a second footage looks like. But anyway, moving from that, I've already been talking about this subject or this topic for about a minute now. What I want to talk about next is a different camera. Now, I have like a bunch of older cameras, so just bear with me. I have a Canon. Let me show you a couple. Now I have a couple of tape camcorders, which if you're familiar with, this is what was used back in like probably the late 2000s here. Just a couple of camcorders. Now this is a DV tape camcorder and this is a high 8 camcorder, which they both shoot pretty good footage. And I think I'm limited to 30 frames a second on it, but I'm going to give an example here in a second of what they both look like, just to see what you think. Yeah, so which should we go for first? I'm gonna try to make this interactive. I'm guessing you tap this one, but so the next bit of footage. This is the Sony Handycam, the high 8 camcorder that I was just talking about in the previous video. But this is all the same video, but I'm cutting between different cameras. So this is the high 8 camcorder, which is the Sony. If you haven't been able to tell, the quality of the image has gone down quite significantly. If I use this camera, it'll be for I guess whatever you want, but I'm just giving you an example of what the image looks like. This camera does shoot in 2 different aspect ratios, which is 16:9 and 4:3. Right now I'm shooting in 16:9, and it can also shoot in 4:3. I don't know if I mentioned, but this camera also shoots in 30 frames a second, so we are limited to just 30 with this camera. This camera is mainly just made for consumer purposes, like home videos and that type of deals. But if you like the aesthetic, I'm more than happy to use it. So this is a Sony Handycam. I'm going to switch to this Canon right here, which is a DV tape camcorder, and it might look a little bit better. And but before that, I'm going to switch the aspect ratio on this camera. Alright, so now I've switched the aspect ratio to 4:3, which is a square. With the previous image, we got a more wide angle. But like again, this is made for home videos and such, and I still have options even on the DSLR, the DSLR Canon that I have, the T6S, to shoot in 4:3, but it definitely degrades the footage. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this camera. So this camera shoots in 16:9 and 4:3, and the image that you're looking at right now is in 4:3. Like really old televisions and stuff like that. And there's a movie out, like I think I was talking about previously, called A Ghost Story, and it's shot at this aspect ratio. So there's an example of this footage, and yeah, I don't know if I'm giving you everything that I need to tell you, but this is it. Now I'm going to talk about this camera, or I'm going to show you the footage of this camera. It's recording at this moment. It's giving me a white little dot, so I can't tell if it's recording, but it gave me a good indication that it is by like sound. So I think it's recording, so here I go. Basically, this Canon camera is the same thing as the high 8 camera. They both shoot at the same resolution, and they both shoot at the same frame rate, which is 30 frames a second. I'm really just repeating myself, so here's just an example of this camera. If you like the footage more, that's up to you. Only thing I can recommend is watching everything that you're looking at right now on the highest quality, or the biggest television that you have. If you have a good size television, please watch it on it, because you're going to see all the little things, and you're going to see like a bunch of little, probably little jagged edges and stuff like that from the degradation in quality. So if you like the aesthetic, same thing with the high 8. They're pretty much the same thing. If you like one, just go ahead and tell me later. So, yeah. And I'm going to explain. Yeah. I really hope the video that I made for you worked out, and I couldn't end it off without giving you this video from the 1980s camcorder. So hope it helped out. Look forward to seeing you, man. Welcome to the 80s.